Hey guys, and welcome back to Teal House Farm. Today we are going to can some green tomato slices. Nanny's not excited about that one. For our canning pantry. So recently we had a tomato plant that in a storm, the stake that was supporting it came out of the ground and fell over, took the whole tomato plant with it. And since that plant obviously is not going to survive, the next day I went out and I picked all the green tomatoes off of it. The first thing I did is I made green tomato salsa verde, which was delicious. I'll link that recipe below. I love having that one on the shelf as well, but there were still quite a few tomatoes left over. So I selected some of the larger ones and kept them out of the salsa verde recipe. And I'm going to use them today to can green tomatoes in slices. And typically I use the slices for making fried green tomatoes, and I will link how to do that with the canned slices below because it's something that we made a video on recently. But a little while ago, a viewer sent me a recipe. I believe it was Adele sent me a recipe for green tomato cake. And then someone else sent me a recipe for green tomato pie. And they both use the canned slices. And so I'm really interested. I think we're going to try those this year as well. To get started, I have already washed these tomatoes, and so we're going to go ahead and slice them about 1/4 inch thick, mostly uniformly here. And if there's any damaged spots, you obviously want to make sure you cut those out. Make sure they're washed really well, and then we are going to get everything set up. You're going to want to use wide mouth jars if at all possible for this. It's just going to make your life easier, and you're also going to need to boil some water and have some lemon juice on hand. But that's basically all we need to can these. This is a pretty simple process. So first things first, let's get these sliced, and then we'll get them all ready to be loaded in the jars. Okay, first things first, we've washed these tomatoes, so now we're just gonna slice them. I slice off the very top to get that woody center core out, and then other than that, I just leave the tomato how it is. I do nice thick slices the way that I would want for a fried green tomato. Too thin, they might get a little bit mushy. I do keep the end as well because we'll use that. And we put them all in a bowl. And then on the stove, I have been simmering the jars we're going to use. We're going to use wide mouth pint jars today. So we want to simmer those 10 minutes to sterilize them. We also need to put a kettle of water on the stove to boil. Once we've loaded the jars with our tomatoes, we're going to want to top them off with boiling water. It doesn't take nearly as much water as you'd think since the tomatoes take up so much space on the jar, so a kettle full will be just fine. For the lids and rings, we're going to wash them in hot soapy water, and then we're going to place them in this saucepan here, and we're going to simmer that saucepan on the stove for 10 minutes, just like the jars, to get them sterilized to be filled. The jars are ready. Don't skip the sterilization process. When it comes to water bath canning, it's really important that you sterilize your jars first. For pressure canning, you don't need to bother because as long as your jar is clean, anything that's in that is going to just die in the pressure. But water bath canning, you want to make sure you sterilize your jars first. We're going to load up our slices. We're going to need a 1/2 inch headspace. You can go ahead and load them pretty high. And I prepped 6 jars just in case, but we only needed 4, so we're not going to have to use the thin mouth jars or the regular mouth jars. We'll get to stick with the wide mouth, which is going to make it a lot easier to get the slices out when we're ready to use them for making fried green tomatoes this winter or this spring. All right. Next, we're going to go ahead and top off with water. I always overload just a little bit because once you come through with that plastic knife and debubble, you'll notice that things kind of fall in. And if anything is still a little bit too tall, we go ahead and just peel it off the top. Those look really nice. Now we need to add a tablespoon of lemon juice to each pint jar for acidification for safe water bath canning. Don't skip that step either. We want to keep everything safe. Nobody wants botulism. We're going to go ahead and we've wiped the rings of the jar and wipe off the rims of the jar, and then we're going to go ahead and place our hot lids on and our hot rings. Fingertip tightness, and then into the water bath canner. We're going to go ahead and place 1 jar on each corner just to make sure everything's evenly weighted to make it easy to lower and take out. And then we're going to put the cover on, bring them to a boil. Make sure you have at least 2 inches of water over the top of your jars. Once we hit a rolling boil, we can set our timer. It's 40 minutes, and we're just going to let it go at that rolling boil for 40 minutes. Once it's done, we turn the stovetop off, we let them sit for 5 minutes, and then we can go ahead and pull them out. Sometimes they tip a little bit when you pull them out. Oh, I totally undid everything I was trying to do. It'll be okay. They should still seal just fine. But obviously you want to try not to have that happen. Okay, so we got them all done and put away. And really the only thing I use green tomato slices for is for fried green tomatoes. That's what I like them for, and I can link a recipe below. We made them recently, made a video of how we make them. Real easy, real cheap, real fast, and they're great, you know, dipped in some ranch, especially like our homemade ranch, which is really tangy. That's good. I can link that recipe below too. But that's really the main use for them. And then we have the salsa verde with the green tomatoes, which I use when I make Mexican dishes. So green tomatoes is one of those things in your garden that really does have a good amount of value in it. Hey, what are you doing, little man? Hi, baby. Has a lot of value to it, and a lot of times, because green tomatoes isn't something we see in our everyday life or something that you really buy at the grocery store, we kind of forget, and then we let that frost come and it kills off the plants and then kills off the green tomatoes, and we've really left quite a valuable food source behind. A couple tips I forgot to mention: when you're picking your green tomatoes, you still want to make sure you're picking them from healthy plants. Don't pick them from diseased plants. Same thing as the red tomatoes. If that plant looks like it's got some sort of strange illness going on, just let those tomatoes die too, because you just never know. And chances are when you cut into them, they're going to be of bad quality. And also, don't pick them after the frost is the recommendation. A lot of that, I believe, has to do with quality and not safety. Once it frosts, the tomato loses its integrity. Even the green tomato, they get really squishy and gross. So you really want to make sure, especially the night before, like watch your weather apps, watch the news, whatever. And when you see that threat of first frost coming, get out there the night before and pick all of your green tomatoes and put them up. In the middle of winter, you're going to have some fun options on your shelf that you can really enjoy with friends and family. Plus, it adds some nice color to your pantry, some nice bright greens. So, thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.